Good evening and welcome to Hackney's Planning Committee. Apologies for the short delay. Apparently it's a YouTube issue. I hope you can hear us. Okay, well, it is streaming. We've got one of our resident computer geeks who sees it's working. So well done, Mario. So my name is Councillor Vincent Stopps, and I shall be chairing this meeting for the final time. I'd just like to thank my fellow councillors for whom it is there at last meeting also. Katie, my fab deputy, and Brian have both been diligent and with us here for the last 16 years. Also AJ, thank you AJ for your work, and good luck to all of those others seeking reselection. The council will be recording this meeting and it'll be live streamed as it is on YouTube. We're now back in person, and councillors voting this evening are those here in the meeting, and we'll be undertaking the meeting in as close a fashion as we can to our normal format. Some officers are taking part remotely to allow social distancing, some are in the chambers. The virtual meeting technology has a chat function. Please only use it for technology related issues. So can I introduce members? So I've introduced Councillor Hanson, Councillor Joseph, Councillor Brian Bell, Councillor Chauhan, Councillor Race, and Councillor Levy. On my right is Natalie, our Head of Planning. On my left, sorry, on my right, Gareth from Government Services, and Christine is here to advise us on legal matters. There are also other planning officers and transport officers on conference calls to advise us. Just to thank all their predecessors, many hundreds of council officers have served the committee so well in my time. Without further ado, I'll go straight on to our normal format. There are objectors and applicants here, some in person, some joining us, no, they're non-joining us remotely. So we'll hear each application summarised by officers, a 5-minute statement from objectors and a 5-minute statement from the applicant. Members will then be free to ask questions. It's my role as chair to make sure members have all the information they need to make a decision, objectors and applicants have their say, and that the meeting runs properly. I'll not be taking any contributions from the floor. This is a meeting in public, but it's not a public meeting. You must have given notice to the Government Service Officer before the meeting by registering to speak. As I've said, you'd have strictly 5 minutes as applicants, and you need to split that time between you. Members are not representing either their wards nor their political parties. We make our decisions on the basis of any site visits we've made, what we've read in the reports, and of course what we hear this evening. We must only take account of policies adopted by the council, other material planning policies and material planning considerations. Can I emphasise that members should not discuss nor take account of non-material planning matters? Members making the decision should not have allowed themselves to prejudge any application prior to the meeting. Similarly, if they have any interest in the application site or the people involved, they should declare that interest and may remove themselves from the decision. When we've finished our deliberations, we'll vote on the recommendation, and when the decision is made, that is ordinarily the end of the matter for the committee. The applicant may appeal our decision. Objectors may seek legal redress. I'd advise you to seek advice in either case. Finally, hopefully we won't need to take a break this evening. We'll work all the way through because we've got only 2 items, one of which is very short. Now can we move to the agenda? Firstly, apologies for absence.
Chair, I've had apologies from Councillor Garcia. I noticed that Councillor Young isn't in the room, but I believe she's given declarations of interest for the first item.
She has. She's declared interest in the first item, so she's coming for 7:15.
Okay, and just for the public record, there are no objectors registered to speak for this evening's meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we've got nothing from the monitoring officer to report, and we've got no minutes, so we can go straight on to the main item, 14 to 40 Newton Close and 456 to 4847 Sisters Road. So over to you, please, Catherine.
Good evening, members. Could you just confirm that you can hear me and see the presentation, please?
I can hear you and I can see the presentation.
Brilliant, thank you. Good evening. Members will be aware that there is an addendum report that's been circulated which has some amendments to the recommendation. This application relates to a site to the south of Seven Sisters Road, immediately to the northwest of Woodbury Down, which is shown on blue in this development plan extract. The red shaded area is a conservation area and the green is a green corridor. The existing building is a mainly 3-storey building providing 28 one-bed social rented units for occupation by older persons. To the west of the site are 5-storey buildings located within Phase 5 of Woodbury Down, which are to be redeveloped in due course as part of the wider Woodbury Down Estate Regeneration Project. And to the south is Kickstart Site 4, which is also part of the Woodbury Down Regeneration. This has heights of between 4 and 19 storeys. To the east are 2 terraces of 2-storey dwellings, which are more clearly shown in this view. These are the closest buildings to the application site. This view also shows the new river, which is within the linear conservation area, and the trees along the northern boundary of the site. The proposal before members is for the redevelopment of the site, including demolition of the existing building and the erection of 2 buildings with a landscaped area between them. The northern building would have 10 storeys and provide 36 units of shared ownership accommodation, and the southern building would be partially 7 storeys, partially 5 storeys, and would provide 40 units of London affordable rented accommodation. In total, 76 units of 1 and 2 bedroom accommodation. The development would provide 100% affordable housing at a mix of 53% London affordable rent against 47% shared ownership. This represents an uplift of 12 units of social rented accommodation over the current on-site provision. All of the units would be restricted to occupation by older persons and would be secured as affordable housing in perpetuity, and current residents would have a right to return, with the council maintaining 100% nomination rights. All units exceed the nationally described space standards and are provided with recessed private balconies and are capable for adoption for occupation by persons with disabilities and specialist care needs. There would be on-site supervision for occupants and care available to provide assisted living for those who need it. The units are entirely 1 and 2 beds. This is a response to the nature of a development which provides the housing for older persons who are not expected to have dependents living with them. That's 71% 1 bed and 29% 2-bed. Although some of the units are single aspect, they're all quite generously sized and significantly over the minimum standards set out in the nationally described space standards. And as they're overshadowed by their balconies, which will help combat overheating and south facing, together with mechanisms incorporated into design, this is considered to be acceptable. This slide shows the view from Seven Sisters Road, with the taller 10-storey building in the foreground with Kickstart 4 in the background. As you can see, the materiality is brickwork with reconstituted stonework at ground level, which will differentiate communal areas from residential, which is replicated on both buildings. The northern building represents a taller building in policy terms, but it does comply with development plan policy in that it would improve the local streetscape and public realm and activate the frontage with Seven Sisters Road in particular. It's also legible in the wider context, which includes the adjoining Woodbury Down estate I referred to earlier, which in the case of Phase 5 is expected to deliver a significant amount of housing in the near to medium future. Other phases local to the site include Phase 3, which has a 20-storey tower under construction, and there are other towers in earlier phases which are slightly more remote. The ground floor layout of the northern building is shown here. It incorporates a main entrance to Seven Sisters Road to allow activation of a streetscape and includes a colonnade and planting to this elevation. The ground floors of both buildings provide office space for staff, communal areas for occupants and bicycle mobility, buggy and waste storage. The design incorporates 32 long stay and 14 short stay cycle parking spaces, storage and charging facilities for 44 mobility buggies and 2 on-site blue badge parking spaces, with provision in section 106 for on-street provision of a further 5 spaces. This is the east elevation, which will face a conservation area, and it shows the materiality of the buildings and the cutaway section from the lower southern building. This drawing shows the relationship to the neighbouring dwellings in terms of separation distances and windows, and also the footprint of the existing building. It's particularly useful in demonstrating that the true elevation of the east, from the east, will not be seen in any single view as a single mass due to the pulling away of the flank elevation in order to create space between the proposed building and the neighbouring dwellings. The proposal will result in some loss of light to neighbouring properties, as summarised in the report. However, it is limited in extent and mitigated by various factors, including a low baseline for some of the openings, the presence of balconies and deck access, which already overshadow some of them, and the large size of the openings in question. This also demonstrates the closest separation distances, which are 10 metres here, and 7 metres here. Pardon me. These views from the south and east also illustrate the visual impact of the chamfering of the building, as well as how the materiality will be seen in views for development. The darker tone is to be achieved through a corduroy banding texture to the brickwork, which in the case of the taller building will be predominantly lighter above above the 7th story level. The proposals include living roofs and a blue roof to the southern building, as well as a landscape sensory communal garden incorporating seating areas which will be located between the two buildings. Although most of the trees on the site, which are all located along the northern boundary here, are to be retained, 2 false acacias would be lost as a result of a proposal. Their caveat value is sought to mitigate the loss in terms of public amenity, biodiversity and carbon sequestration. And we do have a landscape officer present to answer any specific questions about this. The development will achieve a biodiversity net gain of 46% and an urban greening factor of 0.454, both of which are policy compliant, in fact exceed the policy requirements. The development also exceeds development plan targets for carbon reduction, but will require a carbon offset due to not achieving a zero carbon development. However, all heating and hot water will be provided by way of air source heat pumps, whilst electricity will be generated through rooftop solar voltaic arrays, the details of which, in terms of the overall carbon calculations and the energy strategy will be secured by way of Section 106 agreement. So in conclusion, this proposal will deliver considerable public benefit in terms of provision of affordable housing, specifically for older persons. It represents almost an entire year's worth of supply for the council, which outweighs the limited harm caused by the proposals, which in large part can be mitigated by the proposed conditions and heads of terms. And for this reason, the application is recommended for approval as per the papers.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got no objector, but we'll have an applicant who wants to speak. So Nick, you've got your 2.5 minutes, followed by Elizabeth, roughly, but both of you 5 minutes, we will close you down. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak and provide a brief synopsis of Anchor Hanover Housing. I want to start by saying that we're extremely proud to have worked in collaboration with council officers in developing a 100% genuinely affordable proposal, something which is quite a rarity in the market today. Anchor Hanover are the largest registered provider of older persons accommodation in England. We provide over 50,000 homes across 1,800 locations, operating in 97% of local authorities. The organisation was formed in 2018 following a merger of Anchor Trust and Hanover Housing Association. Prior to the merger, both Anchor and Hanover had individually existed for over 50 years. In Hackney alone, we own nearly 1,000 homes, of which the majority are let via nominations from the council. Our accommodation provides independent living for residents aged 55 and over. We have previously successfully regenerated 3 buildings in the borough: Lime Tree Court, which completed in 2015, Quadra Court, which completed in 2017, and the award-winning Warrand House, which completed in 2020. The regeneration of these sites has seen 144 new fit-for-purpose homes created in the borough. Newton Close is the next building identified for regeneration due to both the current limitations of the building in not meeting long-term aspirations for older people in Hackney and the adjacent wide-scale Woodbury Down Estate regeneration. We view Hackney as a crucial partner of ours as we look to continue to build more affordable homes where older people love living. Newton Close offers both Anchor Hanover and yourselves the opportunity to build on the regeneration work of the Woodbury Down Estate and provide an entirely all-affordable housing scheme on the site for local older people.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak as well. Catherine's provided a very comprehensive assessment of the planning application in her committee report, as well as a helpful summary in her presentation. So I'll be brief in covering planning matters from our perspective. From my point of view, it's been a pleasure to work on this scheme, which has one key objective: to replace the existing affordable older persons accommodation on this site with much improved provision of the same type in terms of design quality and by making more efficient use of the well-located site. Anchor acknowledges the impressive and significant improvements taking place adjacent to the site on the Woodbury Down Estate and has been inspired to deliver further high-quality regeneration to complement it. The design team has worked hard to achieve this and has taken on board and responded to feedback throughout the process. Pre-application engagement began in January 2020, and between then and the submission of the application in August 2021, Anchor engaged directly with existing residents of the site who will have the right to return, as well as Hackney Housing and Adult Services officers. We engaged in pre-application discussions with Hackney's planning department. We presented proposals to Woodco and ward councillors, and we held an online public consultation with invites distributed to 700 neighbouring properties. And while we were pleased to receive some constructive feedback to work with, the overall response was overwhelmingly positive. In my opinion, it's not hard to see why. The proposal will deliver 100% affordable housing specifically for older people, which is an increase of 48 additional specialist affordable units than currently on site. It includes communal facilities and services aimed at combating isolation and loneliness and prioritising the facilitation of wellness over reactive care. And the design team has worked collaboratively to take account of the site constraints, evolving surrounding context, requirement for high quality accommodation which is suitable for the future residents. And this has resulted in a carefully considered design response that meets numerous planning policy requirements without compromising on the affordable tenure. We believe we've worked with your officers to negotiate delivery of an optimum solution for this site, and we hope that you agree. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions to kick us off, and then I'll hand over to members. Catherine, I wonder if you could put up that slide with the distances from the nearby buildings.
Yes, certainly. I'll just get that up. It won't be a moment.
Thank you. That's it. So the little buildings, as I call them, are 2-3-story buildings. The ones on the right of the drawing there are some distance from the main building. I can see that. No, the top ones. But those at the bottom are closer to it. But that's a flank wall, is it?
That's correct. Both of these terraces have blank flank elevations. The only openings to these properties are to the front and rear elevations, so the direct overlooking is quite oblique.
Okay, so it's from their gardens that they will see these bigger buildings, let's say.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and if we come around to the other side, this new building goes right up to its boundary. What if Barclays build their next building right up to their boundary? Are we going to get into trouble with problems there? Are there any windows there?
Well, it's anticipated that this development will come forwards quite soon. And Barclays will have to accommodate what's on site at the time of their submission. I can't go into too much detail, but it's not anticipated that there's going to be built development up to the boundary here.
But they could build up to that boundary.
Theoretically, yes, but there's already a building there with facing windows, which would potentially be compromised. So they're constrained by the existing situation.
Okay. Do you recognise that problem, that they could build up to your boundary?
There we go. Apologies. We have an existing building in situ with a number of windows facing that boundary. So, I mean, there would be limitations that Barclays would have if they decided to develop there.
Okay. As long as you're alive to that, thank you. I have one more. No, let me hand over. Yes, the trees, leaf. So tell us about those 2 trees we're losing, please.
The 2 trees are 2 robinias. They have been heavily pruned in the past, and they don't have any natural form and shape anymore. And it's very poor reason to keep them.
Would you say that again, please?
Yeah, the 2 robinias trees
Yes.
has been pruned in the past.
Yep.
It has been pruned to such an extent it doesn't have any kind of natural form or shape anymore.
Okay. Okay, so they're of low value.
Yeah, they're low amenity value. Yeah.
Thank you. Members, Claire, I saw you first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, applicant and officers. I just want to establish if it's social housing or London affordable rent, because obviously the latter is quite different. It's benchmarked by the GLA, but it's more expensive than social rent. London affordable rent is about £178 a week for a 2-bedroom, and obviously social rent formula is calculated using average wages and the location. So what I want to know is there any change in tenure? So are we going from social rent to London affordable rent, or is it already London affordable rent and it's going to still be London affordable rent?
Are you interested in the right to returners or others?
Right to return is another point, but I just want to make sure that the price isn't going to change of the housing, because London affordable rent and social rent are different. At different points in the report, sometimes it says social rent and sometimes it says London affordable. So
Okay, Steve's going to add to that, then we'll
Sure.
ask the applicant, I think.
I add to that as well. I agree with Councillor Joseph on 601. It refers to the existing building provides 28 self-contained shelter accommodation social rent flats for older persons, and then says the reprovision is London living rent. So is that true, or is that an issue with the report?
So applicant, can you tell us about the rents?
So the existing rents are a housing association target
Rent flats for older persons, and then says the reprovision is London living rent. So is that true, or is that an issue with the report?
So applicant, can you tell us about the rents?
So the existing rents are a housing association target rent level, and our proposal is to provide London affordable rent levels, but all of those with a right to return to the building will return on the existing terms and conditions that they have at the end of tenancy.
And the London livable rent is higher than the existing housing association rent?
The London affordable rent is, yes.
Okay. By what percentage?
The London affordable rent is set at a benchmark across London as a whole, and is set at around 40% of local market value.
Okay. Carry on if you want to get more.
that wasn't highlighted in the report actually, because on the face of it, it looks like a fantastic proposal, but to hear that the rent is going to increase significantly is a bit more concerning. I mean, London affordable rent, yeah, for a 1 bed, it's about £178 a week. I mean, an equivalent housing association rent in that area, I would guess, would be about £40 a week cheaper, maybe more. That's a generous estimate, so.
Okay, so there's 2 points.
Yeah.
First of all, Catherine, I presume it's compliant insofar as the tenures? And is Councillor Joseph right that the rent is going to go up essentially?
Councillor Joseph's correct in that the proposed accommodation is going to be London affordable rent, except for the exceptions that that Nick Hodgkins pointed out. That having been said, London affordable rent is supported by the GLA, and it still falls under the wide broader umbrella of social rent, along with London Hackney Hackney living rent and other subsets within that group. There's no policy reason to refuse it on that basis.
So they're compliant in terms of their application. You may like it to be something else, but to some degree, that's not really the point. Okay, so where do you think is not accurate?
Sorry, Chair, it is accurate then in that case.
It is accurate.
Well, it is not quite, because in the beginning, it implies that we're getting replacement of what's already there. It says
Where does it imply that?
well, in the very, what page is it? Sorry, forgive me. So it'd be page 14 on my sheets. I don't know if that's the same for everyone else, but where we see what's proposed in terms of housing and what's existing, it says existing shared ownership 0, London affordable rent 28 existing, proposed London affordable rent, there's an uplift. So, you know, at face value, that looks great, but then when we find out actually the rents are rising and maybe more unaffordable for those people, that's a bit more concerning. My view.
Okay, so okay, I understand. But you now understand what the proposition is. Is that right, Catherine? Are members right that this is incorrect?
Yes, I apologise. That should have said social rented. I apologise for that mistake.
So where should we amend? What you're talking about amending the?
It's
Okay,
the
London affordable rents.
Existing units are social rent and the proposed units are London affordable rent, is my understanding, Chair.
Okay,
14 and 15. I
14
think.
and 15. Okay, so those need correcting. And any issues on that at all? Keep going.
Sorry, can I just confirm, my understanding is not that, could you just confirm that London living rent is classed as social rent or an affordable rent?
Catherine?
It's affordable rented accommodation includes social rented and London affordable rent.
Yes, but that's fine. But London affordable rent is not social rent. And
London affordable rent is not social
no,
rent.
but that was the explanation first. Yeah. It's now not. That's fine. Hackney Council also deliberately makes a distinction between social rent and affordable intermediate rents, including London living rent. So it's not right to say that it's a like-for-like replacement. So in terms of policy, is it policy compliant to lose social rented accommodation and have it replaced with what is essentially intermediate affordable rents? That's what I'd like an answer to.
Catherine?
Yes, that's the case. It's a tenure that's supported by the GLA and recognised as being a form of social rent, albeit not formally defined social rent.
So yes, a developer can come forward and make a proposition, and that's what they're making.
Sorry, I think we just went back again. So London living rent is not considered a form of social rent. It's considered a form of affordable rent, is it not? There is a difference. Sorry, Catherine just said
Yes,
again.
it's not social rent.
But Catherine just said again it was a form of social rent. I don't believe that it is.
Sorry, if I could just say that the term social rent includes it's a very specifically defined term, social rent from local authorities and and housing associations, but it's also a wide, broader umbrella term. So it's kind of got two meanings, if that makes sense. And London affordable rent falls within the wider meaning, but not the specifically defined definition. But in terms of policy, it's intermediate and rented accommodation, if that makes sense.
It's what the housing associations are dealing with, isn't it? Okay, we all know what we're about though, don't we? The term social affordable is a mess. You could call council rent, is that what we were, that's what you're on, that's what you call social rent. Our policies and our officers.
You know, we have a certain amount of affordable housing that we want to be social rent. It's important to protect it, and that, well, the application, it now appears, is actually eradicating the social rent on that site.
Rob, enlighten us.
Yeah, if I can, I'd try. There are what you might call genuinely affordable rent homes for rent, which would include social rent, London affordable rent, and Hackney affordable rent. Then there are various intermediate products like shared ownership, shared equity. London living rent is an intermediate product as well. London living rent is different from London affordable rent. Now, London affordable rent and Hackney affordable rent are slightly higher than social rent, and it varies on the unit size. For like a 3 or 4 bedroom unit, the prices are almost the same, but for the smaller units, it's higher for a London affordable rent, but I can't tell you exactly by how much.
Just to say, the 60-40% split you're suggesting is not 60% council very low rents. So our policy is about the social rents that Rob has talked about. It's not about council rents.
Geez, Chair, but social rent is a specific rent, and it's worked out by a formula, a specific formula, and it's set nationally, and it's to do with local earnings and location, and also size of the property. And it is different. It's not in the same category as London affordable. No.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it's confusing, but I do think it's important to acknowledge this.
Chair, do you mind if I make a comment just on the policy situation?
1 minute. Let's hear from Natalie first. That's it.
Is that right? Is it
Yep.
red? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so just looking at the local plans, it's a policy LP13. So the breakdown in terms of 60%, 40%, it specifically says social rent stroke London affordable rent at 60%. And that type of affordable housing is classified collectively as social. And then the 40% is then Hackney stroke London living rent or shared ownership or other genuinely affordable homes. And that 40% as an umbrella term is classified as intermediate. So it is slightly confusing, but the type of affordable housing which we describe as social includes both social rent and London affordable rent. So this proposal is fully policy compliant in terms of what we're trying to achieve through the local plan and indeed the London plan. That makes sense.
Thank you. Applicant.
Sorry, that was exactly what I was going to say, that the policy requirement is social rent / London affordable rent.
Thank you.
Intermediate, thanks.
Stephen.
Thank you. And so therefore, in terms of right to return, do the residents who have a right to return stay on the same contractual relationship that they were on beforehand?
They're going to have a concession, is what I understood.
Yes, they'll stay on the same terms and conditions that they're currently on. So whatever tenancy arrangement they have will come forward with them to the new building.
I do, but what I would like to establish is whether there is any, within the proposed development, any areas that require ramps for wheelchair access. Because I don't see any in the report. It could very well be that there's no requirement at all. But there is, if there is a requirement, it should be incorporated within the design.
Okay. Lifetime Homes, Catherine, can you tell us about that?
Not a drawing, no. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see it.
All of the units are being designed to be what's been described as Part M2 plus for in terms of building regulations and accessibility, which is an enhanced level of the wheelchair adaptable standard, with 10% to be fully wheelchair accessible. That would include level access from the highway.
Okay.
Right. Can I just expand a little more?
Yes, keep going.
Thank you. So obviously I welcome the provision for disability more than currently are offered in other sites, because we are specifically talking about what is in essence retirement homes, I believe. So I've got an issue really with 6410 on page 36. And if you just let me expand a little on why I have a problem with it, is that, as I said, we understand that the application that we're considering today is really for retirement homes. And for older people, there's often fine margins between blue badge eligibility and those that fall just below that standard. The elderly often suffer from mobility issues that make accessing public transport very difficult, especially using escalators on the tube, etc. Therefore, driving for older people is not a luxury, but very much a necessity. And since none of us can stop the march of time, and as I said, there are, for older people, fine margins between blue badge eligibility. And those older residents who do not currently qualify for blue badge badges may very well do so in the, the time the actual building is actually up and running. So my view is that we do not, well, I propose that we do not, in this specific instance, agree to include a car-free development clause, preventing future occupiers from being able to apply for parking permits. And as I believe future demand for disabled bays will far outstrip supply. And therefore, I think we should not accept that and we understand that in essence, we're talking about older people who may not need it today, but may require parking because it for them is not a luxury.
Okay.
That's my idea.
Shall we ask the applicant what their thoughts are on that? Applicant, you got a car driving clientele?
So, sorry, was the suggestion that, because the paragraph you mentioned in the committee report is the section 106 clause to restrict applicants to be able to apply for parking permits. So is the suggestion that in this case, you think that should not apply, and therefore that section 106 clause shouldn't be included?
Yes. I do indeed. I do believe that older people should have the right to apply for parking, because if they can't, if they may, there is a specific number of blue bays designed for this property.
Yeah, we get
the building.
We understand. So, is it your proposition that we have a permit situation that allows residents to park on the street? I'll ask officers what the implication is that. But have you proposed or interested in that at all?
Isn't our own transports?
There is a transport office here, yeah.
Just from, as I mentioned earlier, we've completed 3 regeneration schemes in the sort of last 7 years, and those 3 are car-free developments, other than for disabled usage, and we've not had any, we've not noted it as any operational concern that residents can't park their cars or that they're unable to, to find spaces locally. So it's not an active issue that we've tried to seek on this application.
Thank you. Kazim, can you tell us what the issues are with car-free development on this site?
Thank you, Chair. So we've tried to kind of keep it in line with LP33 policies in kind of seeking car-free developments, except obviously ensuring that anybody with a blue badge has access to a car parking space. I appreciate the point Councillor Levy is making. However, that's not quite reflected in LP33 policies. And the other thinking that we had, or another consideration, was that I believe the accommodation proposed is open to 55 years and over. And that doesn't necessarily kind of equate to mobility issues, at least from, so happy to kind of discuss it further. But like I said, it's not really the proposal for Councillor Levy. It's not really in line with LP33.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hanson.
I just wanted to draw people's attention to the substantial provision for people to store powered scooters in the buggy store, which is on page 14 of the large scale plans. So you have a cycle store, a bin store and a buggy store. I'm assuming that when it says buggy, it means powered three-wheel scooters rather than children's buggies, given the nature of the housing.
Good point.
So there is provision for people who might not be eligible for a blue badge, but can ride their buggy to the shops, for example.
Thank you. Any more questions? Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Just two quick ones. On the Stoke Newington Conservation Area Advisory Committee, I assume that given that this is, I think, a new resubmitted proposal, that criticism about the facing the river is now sorted. It certainly looks like it in the pictures, I think, in the designs.
Catherine?
Yes, the Stoke Newington CAC provided additional comments which essentially confirmed that the design amendments had addressed their design concerns, and they're in the Addendum Report.
Great, thank you. And then my final question, Chair, is just around on 6.2.10. Just about the aspects. I noted there's quite a lot of recessed balconies that are facing north. Are they all dual aspects? That's,
Catherine.
Good afternoon. Yes, all of the single aspect units are southwest facing. All of north facing units are dual aspect with aspects to the ends of the building as well.
And is it Catherine, do you mind me asking if the dual aspect is real dual aspect, or is it a sort of little window facing into the balcony?
They round the corner.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I take this a bit further? We have the architect with us. Architect, what's the implication of us aspiring to 100% dual aspect in this type of building? What would happen if we forced you to do that?
Thank you. Frankly, we would not be able to provide anywhere near as many homes as we can. We sought the approach of having two separate buildings rather than one was twofold. Firstly, to maximise the amount of dual aspect homes which could be provided, which can then in turn take advantage of the natural daylight and aspect, and also serves to create that central green space. But that's why, so for instance, the north block is entirely dual aspect because of its smaller footprint. But in order to provide the required number of homes in which to make the project viable, it would have to provide some single aspect homes, although care was taken to ensure that the single aspect homes did have the optimal aspect of southwest, with which the concern then with southwest, of course, is overheating, but this is mitigated by recessed balconies.
Thank you. Claire?
I was concerned like Steve about the single aspect, but actually I think being southwest facing is in a way even worse. It's very hot for people. They can't get a through draft sometimes with the sun beating in if it's facing south or southwest.
Yeah, there is a degree of solar gain to be had with Southwest, although it is also the best aspect in which to take advantage of natural daylight. So this has been taken into account with the use of recessed balconies, which set back on that recessed plane there is further glazing. The specialist, the M&E consultant, has conducted thermal testing on these units, and bearing in mind also with the ventilation, which will mechanical ventilation, which would be provided, and it was concluded it was not a concern and it was compliant.
Thank you. Catherine, could you go up to the photograph from Seven Sisters, please? I've got a question there about the entrance.
I'm just getting the slides up.
The overall picture, no, the one that's the CGI. No. No.
That's the elevation to Seven Sisters Road.
No, go through them again then.
Sorry. Oh,
that one.
Sorry,
That
apologies.
One. Okay, so I'm looking from Haringey, and I can see a sort of an entrance. Is that what's going on there? Can you tell me what the landscaping there is?
The landscape is the frontage is pretty hard up against the highway, but there are planters, and the intention is that there will be climbers climbing up the front of the building.
Okay, and then you come round from the Seven Sisters Road. What do you hit there?
Sorry, around here?
Yes,
or around
yeah. No, round the front.
This
What's
is
that? Yeah.
This is a footpath along the canal, the New River. There's a small playground here, and this is the resumption of New River Way, which kind of links in round here. It's a private road that comes off of Newington Close.
Okay, I understand. Okay.
Shall I put the site location plan up? That might help.
Yeah, please.
So that view was coming down here towards this aspect. So there's a footpath along here, and that's a private road which is accessed from down here.
Okay, I'm with it. Thank you very much indeed. And my final point is about materials. We went on a planning tour last week, and we heard about non-cementitious mortar. I wonder what your view of that is, architect. The benefit from a sustainability point of view is that the bricks that you use will be able to be cleaned and used again. So we're going to propose a condition: best endeavours to use non-cementitious mortar. Applicant.
So we have looked at the market around with non-cement based mortars. The most common one available is lime, which naturally comes with appearance issues after a number of years due to the efflorescence. There are very limited amounts of product on the market that are available at scale in order for the size of this sort of development to have the current supply chain issues. I also spoke directly to a couple of large-scale contractors that work both in partnership with yourselves as a council and us as an RP, and they've said that that sort of product is not available en masse to them on the market. We would certainly use our best endeavours to look, and would hope that a material like that develops and comes onto the market and is certainly affordable to enable the 100% affordable scheme to be provided. But at the moment, what we've been told is that supply chain issues would be of a big concern.
Thank you. So we will include that as best endeavours, and we'll direct our architect who claimed this to you. Thank you very much indeed for doing this on our behalf. Any more questions, members? Ryan?
Just to say on record that I disagree with Councillor Levy completely. I don't think there are any grounds for disapplying our policy on car redevelopment in this case.
Thank you.
I note that it's on a public highway with a number of bus routes passing by. I also don't know where these people would park their cars if they had them, because it would be done redevelopment doesn't provide a lot of on-street parking spaces. So I think it'd be totally unrealistic to not apply our current policies on discouraging private car use in this case.
Thank you. Claire?
Just to pick up on the right to return of the existing tenants, if I may. So I think we mentioned earlier that they had the right to return on their current same tenancy, so same rent. And I guess it's just when they leave that their rents go up. Is that right? And perhaps could you just tell me a little bit about the decant process? It may not strictly be material, but obviously we are concerned about our elderly residents in Hackney. So where do they go while you're knocking it down and rebuilding it?
Just to say this is interesting, and I'm happy for you to answer that, but it's not a planning issue. So we need to be clear so this doesn't get into the record.
Completely. And your concern is our concern, because there are residents and they've lived in our homes for a number of years. As I highlighted earlier, we're in a very fortunate position that we own almost 1,000 homes in Hackney, and we do have a quite high void turnaround time in turnover in comparison to what you would have in a general needs tenancy. So we've spoken to the residents that currently live on the estate. The majority want to remain within Hackney. They have the opportunity to move to any property in the country, and particularly any anchor-owned property, but the majority have expressed that they would like to stay local, and we're going to be endeavouring to rehouse them as quickly as possible within our stock holding that we have in the borough. It really depends on the availability of properties that we have. So on average, we would probably have, say, four voids per month. But again, that's very much average. That's also, without being
Thank you.
Seasonal.
Have a chat later. Just for the record, your organisation came with 17, I think it was, developments in the past across the borough. So it's most of them weren't built out, I think. Right, okay, so no more questions. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to condition and completion of 106 agreement and referral to the GLA, was that right? Added?
That's correct, yes, that's the correct procedure.
Okay, and so it's a bit different. It's in the addendum and refer to the GLA. All those in favour, please show. Are there any against? Abstentions? Thank you very much indeed, and look forward to seeing the So just for the record, Councillor Young arrived late because she had a conflict of interest declaration to do with the initial item. Thank you. Okay, I've got you guys just answering questions. That's correct, is it? Yep. I almost can't see you, but I think you're out there. Okay. Right, over to Barry. I can just see this. Barry in person. Barry in person. Hello in person, Barry.
Yeah, I know.
Welcome
It's
back.
good to be back. Thanks, Chair. This item relates to Quicken Tower House, which is located within the South Shoreditch Conservation Area, adjacent to a small public square called Worship Square, and adjacent to a listed building, Grade 2 listed building. So the original consent was approved in 2020. This is an image of from the approval pack. The application is to discharge Part A of Condition 3, which requires the submission of material samples. So the image in front of you is from the approval pack, and the materials proposed are broadly similar to that you see here. The principal cladding material is terracotta. The corner part of the building is to be clad in a mid-blue, 3 tones of a mid-blue terracotta, and then the 2 bookends, which mediate between the corner and the adjacent buildings, are to be clad in 3 tones of a light blue colour. This image shows the 3 tones. In each case, the blue colour has been arrived at after a study of the surrounding context and complements the predominantly orange and brown tones in the area. And the 3 tones of blue that have been chosen in each case have been arrived at following a careful colour analysis. This is an annotated drawing which shows the full set of materials, as well as the terracotta. There's a dark anodized bronze to be used for the metalwork at the base of the building, the window surrounds and spandrels. And there's also a lighter anodized metal to be used on the top floor, the recessed top floor. This is some photographs of the full set of materials, including the precast concrete panels to be used on the rear of the building. And the table in front of you has the materials there if you want to go and take a look at them. The recommendation is to approve the details submitted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So members might want to have a look. Can I ask one question? The embodied carbon in this terracotta stuff, is it less or more than brick or the same?
Excellent question. I honestly don't know the answer. It will be of a similar nature. It's a similar constituent product.
Similar to brick. Okay, thank you.
Oh, did I? I think I just voted by accident. You can get different terracottas with different glazes. We have one glaze. Hi, sorry. There's different ways that you can glaze the terracotta, and in this case we've gone for a single glaze, which means it only goes through essentially an oven once rather than twice, and that helps to reduce obviously the energy used to manufacture the material as well. They are on the bases of the vertical piers on the street-facing facades. So it's a precast concrete, so it's a more robust material. Exactly, yeah.
I was just going to say, for the benefit of the live stream, the councillors are currently looking at a set of materials. So
those are manufactured by Pelagio, and they are Italian.
Okay, thank you very much. So has everybody seen the materials? Any questions about the materials? They look good fun. It's great on the side of that, what will be a great public square down at Worship Square. So that looks really exciting. Okay, so the recommendation is,
again, just for the record, I take it no questions then. Nobody's raised their hand. No. Okay, thank you.
No questions. To approve details, all those in favour, please show. That is all of us. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, applicant, for coming along. Can I just ask you to note the delegated decisions? Councillor Hanson?
No, I have an AOB, Chair.
Okay, and that's with that. Any other business?
Yes, Chair, I just wanted to reciprocate on what you said earlier about service to this committee. I think you've done 16 years as Chair.
I think so,
It's
yes.
quite a while. I'm barely missed a meeting in that time. I think I've only had to chair one meeting. And you will not be surprised to know that that's because Vincent was abroad speaking at a conference about Barcelona September. Bingo.
In Chicago.
I have chaired the odd item where Councillor Stopps has had an interest, but he has been a diligent attender. We went to see a cross-laminated timber building just last Friday on the planning tour, and the planning tours were instigated by Councillor Stopps, and they have been really amazing and an absolutely excellent way of educating the committee about the relationship between the things we see on paper in this room and the things that are actually built on the streets. The other thing Councillor Stopps instituted was in fact the A4 plans, which are lots better than the A4 plans used to be, which were virtually illegible in points. But you know, this is about making the committee more democratic and people understanding the things they're voting on, which is obviously unbelievably important. What else? Just to say, you know, we do get feedback from people outside the town hall, people who've come to speak to the committee. We had a lovely letter a few years ago from someone who'd come for a small item that was right on the end of the agenda, but sat through the major schemes beforehand and wrote us a letter the next day saying that we'd taken as much trouble with the little scheme she was associated with as with the major schemes earlier in the meeting, and she really respected that. And just this week, we had a very, very nice letter from our heritage officer, Tim Warder, who was extremely complimentary about Vincent and said, if you seek your monument, look around you, which is a very apt phrase. You know, it's inevitable that people will sometimes think this committee's made the wrong decision. That is the nature of the game we're in. But I think it's worth saying our figures for getting overturned by the inspector are very modest. Sorry, I've got an insect. Extremely modest, but you don't want to have that figure at zero. It is correct that we should get turned over once in a while, because if that figure was zero, it would show we were passing any old rubbish, and that's not the case. So I'd just like to sum up with the help of this fly, that Vincent has done a sterling job on behalf of the citizens of Hackney, and I think people should be extremely grateful to him, and I wish him all the best for the future.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to retire to the ship for a pint, assuming there's no football match on, although Graham might stay there for the football. So thank you very much, and cheerio to everybody here and to anybody who managed to work out how to watch us today. Thank you very much. Good night.